Farming. When you hear that word, a range of games come into your mind, whether it's farming for crops, farming for experience to level your character up, or farming that one singular boss 15 to 20 times just to get that remaining piece of armor set that you needed to have the full complete armor set, only to then not play the game because there's no reason to, because you've done everything you wanted.
Thank you, Monster Hunter, for that.
But what's been really interesting is that there's been a shift in the gaming industry, especially in the last couple of years. We've had AAA titles have these huge expectations only to flop upon their release, whether it's because of time restrictions or the craziness that's happening around the world. Unfortunately, they're not delivering our expectations. And there's been this really bright light that's been shining upon these indie games. And now there's a big respect into the indie developers. And what's been interesting about that is that we can see either it's a small team or a singular person can really put together a really well done game. Not to get too off topic, I've been really enjoying these new indie titles that are coming out. I come from an FPS background where there was nothing more exciting than parachuting down in PUBG and being able to kill people. And I'd rather stand on my farm in Stardew Valley and have the wind blow in my hair as there's an ambient sound in the background. It's an immersive experience I'll never be able to explain. So because of Stardew Valley, I've been able to pick up other games, especially in the farming genre, which I never thought I'd really enjoy. Let's say there is a farming game that not only gets you to farm some crops, but you can also treat it like a roguelike type game. Now that doesn't make any sense. If you see the two kind of genres, they're very different. If you look at the farming genre, your expectation is to have a farm that you grow crops and you grow it bigger and you level up so you can put better equipment on your farm to make it even more better, and you sell those crops and you become a millionaire. And it's all in the fun because you did that, you worked on it, and just because you put the effort into it, you get to see it grow. But roguelike games, if you've ever played them, are very much different, just like the Binding of Isaac. You can work on these and try and work on certain skills or get certain upgrades and whatnot, and then if you die, then it's all gone. Then you have to start all over again. Everything that you ever achieved has now disappeared. Now imagine if that was in Stardew Valley. One big meteorite was coming and it destroyed all your crops, and now you have to start your farm all over again. Do you think you could do it? That doesn't exactly happen in this game, but it's very similar. Atomicrops is an interesting concept to the farming genre. Essentially, you start off on a farm. We don't exactly know why, but it is a similar story to Stardew Valley. You're leaving the city, town, to now going to the farming industry, and you start to find out that there's some sort of catastrophic event that's about to happen, and it's only up to you to make sure that that doesn't really impact your farm. You start off with this little crop area, and it is up to you to start farming crops. Now, where do you get these seeds, you ask? Well, that's where you have to explore. Now, there are 4 directions that you can go in this game. You start on your farm that is right in the middle, but you can go north, south, east, and west. However, the north and south side are blocked off by a gap that you need bridges for. So it is up to you to start exploring, and once you do that, you start to find out there are all these enemies that are just roaming about. There are little forts that you can find in these areas. Each of these forts have different rewards that you can get. Some of them it's just seeds, and some of them are actually upgrades that you can use on your farm. There's a range between 1 to about 7, 8, or even 9 enemies per fort, depending on what area that you go into. The easier ones will have 1 to about 5 enemies per fort, and they're pretty easy to kill. And the reward will range, and you can actually see what reward it is by going past that fort. It is up to you that during the day you leave your crops alone on your farmland and go out and start to defeat these enemies to get not only more seeds, but little upgrades that can help you with your farming experience. But once it gets to nighttime, you can't just leave your crop area. It's time to return home, because there are enemies that have realized that you decided to make home in the middle of their home, and they're here to eat all your crops. Every night there is going to be a wave of enemies that are coming by, and it is up to you to defend them. You have a little gun to really start yourself up, but you can eventually upgrade this, and you can also have little turrets to help you to defend your farm as well. Every day that you actually survive, you actually then get teleported to a town that is nearby. The crops that you've been able to grow, you can then sell, and with the money that you have, you can buy resources, whether it's gun upgrades, things that you can use for your farm to upgrade your farm, bridges to cross certain paths that you can unlock, or romance people, and in doing that, they can actually give you certain buffs that will better your next experience with your crops. Now, there's a variety of crops that you can place down. You can put your singular crops that take one single area that you can fertilize and put water on, or there are trees that will take a 2x2 little slot. These take longer to grow, but they will continuously give you crops, whereas the singular crops, once placed and grown, you can pick them up and sell them. But another really cool, interesting way to grow your crops is if you have 4 of a certain seed and you plant them in a 2x2 area and fertilize all of them, they can actually turn into a bigger version of that crop and have a lot more to supply you, so you can have a lot more money. The more fertilizer you use, the bigger your crops are, and the more that they sell for as well. The game's goal is that there are 10 years that you can play through, and each year is unlocked when the previous year is complete. A year takes 4 seasons, just like any farming game does, and every season lasts for 3 days. Now, to most people that play farming games are like, great, 3 days, I can do that. Well, it's not that easy. There is a day and night cycle that happens, and in between those days you go to a town so you can buy resources, but on the 3rd day of every season there is actually a boss that is going to spawn on your farm, and it is up to you to defeat them. I honestly had no idea that was going to happen. I went through my first spring going, oh, this is really fun, I can't wait for summer, and then seeing this big creature appear out of nowhere and then start trying to kill me and my crops at the same time. Not only am I defending my crops against this monster, but he's also spawning enemies, and there's also enemies that are randomly spawning. It was chaotic. At first I thought this was going to be too chaotic. How am I going to defend my crops because I need them so I can sell them so I can make some money, as well as not dying because there's all these enemies attacking me, and defend my crops, and I don't think I have all my upgrades. It was just a lot to handle, but then I started to have some fun with it. One way didn't work, so why don't I try a different way? Why, instead of chasing the boss, why don't I just stand where I am and shoot them instead? If that didn't work, why don't I try and kill the little enemies first and then go after the boss after that? Some of the bosses are a little more easier to fight with. You start to find out their attack patterns and you can attack them, whereas other ones just want to torch your crops and have nothing to do with you. They just don't want your crops to survive. So your main objective is not just to survive the year, but to survive against these enemies, and that's what's so important about exploring the world that's around your farm so you can get better upgrades. So there's a few things that are going to help you in your playthrough. One of the most important ones is you can actually have a tractor upgrade of a certain kind. Now you can either find these tractor upgrades in certain areas of the map, or you can actually purchase them at the end of every 3rd year. The mayor will have like a celebration for you, and depending on how you perform, they'll give you a certain amount of rewards for that. And then they'll also unlock that area so you can buy some cool tractor upgrades. One of my favorite tractor upgrades is to allow you to dig up a ground when the tractor actually regenerates. You can't just always use these tractors. They actually take some time to regenerate, or you can use some certain upgrades to quicken their regeneration, but it allowed me to tile up a floor. You can't just make up a floor if you wanted to. You need to have hammers that can dig up the ground for that reason. You can have some fun choosing between your tractors. There are different tractors for different kinds of playthroughs, and it's up to you depending which ones you find or the ones you purchase on how you're going to play on your farm. Another thing that you can achieve is scrolls. Now scrolls are delivered by pigeons, and they actually help you with your crops. One of my favorite ones is to boost and water my crops. Watering your crops actually takes a long time. You don't actually have to do any action, your character automatically does it, but it takes a very long time to do. I generally waited till it was nighttime to water my crops because all you have to do is really stand there and it will water it, but with the scroll, it will instantly do that to every crop that you have. So if you're having difficulty in doing that, maybe pick up that scroll instead. But there are other scrolls, including fertilizing all your crops, which will help your crops grow not only better, but bigger so you can sell them for more money. Not only that, you can actually get animals such as chickens and cows and even pigs to help you on your farm. Chickens will help you by clearing off the fiber that continue to grow on your crops. Cows can actually help you with watering your crops, which is honestly one of the most important animals that I purchased for my farm. And then there are pigs that will randomly dig the ground for you to assist you so you can plant more crops instead of you having to do it all the time. Now what's really interesting is that different crops actually sell for different money, which is pretty self-explanatory, but what's also really cool is that there are 2 crops that actually help you in your gameplay. There are heartbeats that if you harvest actually give you health, because in this game you can't just regen your health randomly, you actually need to have something that will give you health. And there's also roses that you can grow, which not only can you trade them in town to the research dude for a heartbeat seed, but you can also trade them into 2 of the randomized romanceable characters that are there. There are 5 different characters that you can romance, and they will randomly show up in town. And when given them the requested amount of roses at 3 different times, you'll eventually become romance with them and they'll help you on your farm. Now my gaming experience was kind of all over the place. When I first picked it up, I thought it was going to be very simple. You tile some ground, you put some crops down, you go into these areas where there are these random forts that will give you random upgrades, and then you can use these upgrades to work on your farm, defeat these bosses, and that was it. But then you start to find out that it starts to gain traction in the difficulty. What I also didn't realize is that I was actually only playing on the first year, and there are 10 levels or 10 years that you can play on. The year actually affects the enemies by making them buffed every year. The year also affects the amount of money or cashews every time you harvest the crop, and also it will lower your health the higher you go in years. My first year was pretty easy. I actually got through it probably in half an hour. It took me some time, but what I didn't realize is even though there are enemies at the end of every year, something crazy was happening at the end of my first year. All of a sudden, my crops had turned into this gigantic monster which all of a sudden wanted to attack me. And I had no idea what to do other than to try and kill it. This thing was creepy looking and I thought I wasn't going to defeat it, but after some really good navigation and avoiding attacks, I was able to finally defeat it and I completed my first year. I was so excited when I did that. I thought I defeated the game, I was ready to put it down, but then the game was like, well, that was your first year. Let's go on to the second year. And that's where the difficulty rised up. 5 to 6 hours later, I still have yet to complete year 2. I never thought the difficulty was going to be this difficult. I'm so used to games nowadays being very easy. You click here, click there, and you're done. But this reminds me of the old school games that we used to play on our PlayStation 2s and Super Nintendos, where like difficulty actually was difficult. I've actually started playing a playthrough of Oblivion, and as a Skyrim fan, I absolutely love Oblivion. It's a really tough game, and as anyone that's ever played Oblivion, you know how difficult it is. You can't just walk into an area and just zap them all and they're dead. It took me many times to go through certain caves, even caves that I was expected to clear. Did I need to upgrade my skills? Did I need to level up? Did I need a better weapon? Probably a yes. And that's what I started to realize with this game, Atomicrops, is that even if you think you've done this game and you completed the first year and it's fine, the second year actually proves difficulty, and if you don't start to progress pretty well, you won't get to year 10. There's actually a variety of characters that you can play from, and the original character is more of a farming character that has a certain amount of buffs. When you complete your first year, you actually unlock another character who's all about turrets and upgrading their weapons. I didn't really like him. I played him for a little bit and I just didn't really like him, honestly, and then I checked the wiki and there's actually a character that I like, but I have to finish year 4 for that, and since I haven't completed year 2, it'll take me a while to get there. I don't think any of my one playthroughs were played the same way. I knew which directions I was going to go, and once I started to unlock areas with bridges, I kind of knew where I wanted to go because I knew how to defeat those certain enemies. And once you start to do these repetitive actions and start to know how to kill enemies pretty quickly, you start to realize that even though this is going to be helpful, it's still going to be difficult. It's mostly just the waves during the nighttime to protect your crops that I had difficulty with, which I absolutely enjoyed. There was nothing that frustrating. It was just every time I died, I was like, okay, don't do this and don't do that. There was many ways that you can play, and not one playthrough of yours is ever going to be the same. If this is something of interest, Atomicrops is available on Steam. I had a fun time with this. If you actually like a farming type game that also has a roguelike ability where if you die, everything is gone. You have to start all over again with your upgrades, your crops, and anything that you had doesn't exist anymore. Honestly, I'm gonna go play some more because I want to get past year 2, and I'll let you know in the comments down below if I defeated year 2. We'll find out.